The biggest struggle always in assisted living or senior living in general is consumers' unmet expectations. It's really important the people you surround yourself by as the leader. I had to pick people that had strengths where I had weaknesses. And so I had a really great management team. So that always helped. Is something that you have to have a skill at if you're going to be able to run a building that big.
Welcome to the Row Room Assisted Living Podcast with your hosts, 𝐵𝐻𝐿𝐦𝐞𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐦𝐩𝐬. Alex Schlow. This is your go-to show for cutting-edge insights from industry leaders in residential assisted living.
Whether you're ready to launch your own assisted living business or looking to invest in this fast-growing, high-impact sector, we are here to equip you with the tools, strategies, and confidence you need to succeed. Get ready to ride the silver tsunami and change the future of senior care. Now on to today's show.
All right, welcome back to the Row Room Assisted Living Podcast, the podcast that brings you expert insights from leaders in assisted living. I'm your host, 𝐵𝐻𝐿𝐦𝐞𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐦𝐩𝐬, and today we are thrilled to have Allison O'Shea joining us. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you have a depth of experience and a couple decades of experience in assisted living, from managing and now working on the education piece of seniors and their families as they age into needing independent or assisted living or memory care, all those kinds of different levels. And I understand you've managed all of those levels as well. So I want to start by just into your background and understanding, how did you get into assisted living in the first place?
Sure. So I got my degree in something called therapeutic recreation. And so I started in senior living in programming, in a memory care, and realized very quickly that, wow, there's like a whole business industry to this. And I grew very quickly into, I was business office manager. I was in sales for a little bit. I was an assistant director, but pretty quickly moved into the director role, and then spent about 15 years just as my buildings got bigger and bigger, all levels of care just happened. And I loved it. I did enjoy that time in my career.
Okay, I want to understand a little more about that experience. So, what was the largest facility you managed?
So the largest facility, I live here in the Triangle in Raleigh. And so it was all levels. So we had over 120 apartments, independent living, 60 assisted living apartments, and 25 memory care apartments. And so that was where I ended my career in that size building.
Wow, that sounds really tough. Can you talk about some of the biggest challenges in managing a facility that size?
I think the most important thing is your management team. I was able to I was recruited for that role. And so I was there from before it opened. So I was really fortunate. To end my assisted living career as a director, to be able to be there from the beginning and create the culture. And we were in a trailer for the first year, and then moving into a building, and then watching it just grow and fill up. And so I think it's really important the people you surround yourself by as the leader. I had to pick people that had strengths where I had weaknesses. And so I had a really great management team. So that always helped. I think the biggest struggle always in assisted living or senior living in general is consumers' unmet expectations. I just think sometimes they just don't really understand the nuances of having to run a building, some of the staffing challenges, families that are really demanding and can take up a lot of time. And so I think it's just being able to juggle it all is something that you have to have a skill at if you're going to be able to run a building that big. But
yeah, family interaction and expectation management is key.
Yes.
I also love what you said. It's about the team. It's the who, not how, right?
Yeah.
With the right folks on the bus, you can get the job done. So love to hear that. What brought you from that to the education side? Can you talk a little bit about that transition and what you're doing now?
Sure. So I went through COVID in senior living. Obviously, for anybody that was in the industry then, it was one of the most challenging times. Looking back, it was probably more challenging than when you were in it. You're just going. You got to keep going every day and do your thing. So I decided to leave because I had one of those moments where I didn't want my boss's job. I was like, I want to take all this I've learned and put it into a new direction. And one of the things I took away from my time in senior living was, I would say for half my career, crisis was normal. I thought we age, we go through crisis, big decisions have to be made, adult children have to come in and save us. And I would say halfway through my career, I've had a light bulb moment where I was like, wait a second, what? Why are we waiting so long to have these conversations? And so that's how I started Openly Aging. And it slowly morphed over I started it in January of 2022. And when I first started, I thought I wanted to help people navigate a crisis or whatever they were going through. And I slowly realized that really who I wanted to speak to were the aging individuals themselves, and giving them the language, the empowerment to have conversations, or at least be more intentional about what are their goals as they age. Crisis doesn't have to be normal. And so that's really where Openly Aging now, where I meet with independent people in their 70s, early 80s who are independent, but really just want to make sure they understand what they can afford in their aging journey. What if their home is their home someplace they can age? And so really just having them be more intentional so they can go to the table with their children and say, hey, I've really thought about this. I want you to know that if this starts happening, I already have a plan for it. Because what I saw in senior living, which I'm sure many administrators will tell you, is how many resentful and angry older people their kids had to come in and save them. And that doesn't set up for a nice community when half the people are there out of not in their control. And then they're just angry and bitter, and it doesn't make for good interactions with associates. And so that's what I really want to change, is this mindset of keeping that control. I want aging people. And the people that I'm now working with in their 70s were the ones I helped with their parents 20 years ago. So I know how that generation thinks and what they saw and what they went through. And they want to do things very differently than what they had to do with their family. As they'll always say, I never want my kids to have to go through what I went through. But in order to do that, you have to have some sort of framework to help yourself. And that's what I provide now to my clients, a framework for them to start having these big conversations.
Wow. So that is funny that 20 years later, now you're helping them a second time.
Yep.
First, it was in crisis, and now it's for themselves, which is interesting because you don't usually hear an approach to focus on the seniors. Usually it's, okay, family, are you planning for this? Or are you now in crisis mode? And what do you do now? So that's interesting because I guess my biggest question, I'm thinking like a lead perspective, like how do you, okay, the families are thinking about the senior care, probably when it's a little too late to be thinking about it. It's because it's there, it happens, right? But how do you get in contact with and bring people into your sphere to have this conversation with the future residents ahead of time?
For me personally, I do a lot of content aimed at that group, the 70-year. I have over 20,000 followers on TikTok, for example, and they're all 70s. So they enjoy that positive message. My book helps people. I've had so many people say, wow, thank you for talking to us, and not in a fear-based way, not, oh my gosh, as you decline, here's what you want to do. No. What are we doing today to not decline? What are we doing today to stay independent? Because what I also saw is through all my years was all these services are out there to help people stay independent. But unfortunately, we sell them. Oh, when you start declining, call us. Well, why aren't we saying, hey, if you want to stay home, you want to stay healthy, or if you want to move into a community because it's good for your social engagement, hey, get to know the physical therapist. You should have a physical therapist on call. If meals are starting to be an issue, what services are out there to help you so you don't lose control over that part? So I think we have this a little backwards, in my opinion, sometimes, where we only reach out when there's a decline, when if we should be looking at our life and saying, what do I want to maintain here? And what service is out there to help me maintain my independence? And then it just creates a new way to think about aging. And I think that will get people over that hump of actually getting help. Because I can say it over and over just as much as I do, it's so heartbreaking to watch somebody just refuse support. And then you have the family dynamic, and they're refusing support because we're presenting support as, oh, you're really declining, you need support, when we should be really reframing it to say, we want you to be independent. But in order to do that, let's just buffer you up a little bit with some services. And that's what I think could change and get more consumers into using services, assisted living, independent living, home care earlier if we use different language.
I love that. The positive reframe is so important, and it's so underutilized, right? In just about everything. It's always that kind of fear tactics that people try and sell you on when you could just be focusing on the positive. One thing I heard you say was 20,000 followers on TikTok. Are the boomers following you? They're on TikTok. Yeah, there,
it's crazy. Yeah. So I did this TikTok challenge because there's a whole backstory to it, but I was like, I know my message is important. And I was struggling. Where are these 7-year-olds? I need them because they don't think they need help. So they don't hire anybody. And so I went on TikTok and I did a 60-day challenge where I posted every single day for 6 days. And my first video was aimed at adult children. Hey, tell your parents about me. And I got so many responses. We're here. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And so I have so much engagement from 70 and 80-year-olds on TikTok.
That's wild. I wouldn't have picked that as the platform. YouTube, maybe. I think even my parents are on Instagram, so probably the gram is a good spot. Are you, just out of curiosity, are you putting everything on multiple platforms? Or are you focused on one?
No, so I put everything. In 2026, I am going to be more intentional with Instagram and YouTube, but everything I post on TikTok goes there. I just don't have as big, but I was using TikTok as like an experimental, let's see, because the algorithms, they spread them out easier than on Instagram and stuff. So it's I have over 600 people on my newsletter, my weekly newsletter. So it's really worked in getting my name out there. Yeah.
I love that. That. I'm very happy for your success. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That is so cool. There's so many seniors on TikTok. I had no idea. One just personal recommendation, YouTube is the most underserved platform. It's so good for getting your message out there, and it's organic. You'll get like fewer watches than you would on a reel or TikTok, but in the long term, you'll get a lot of exposure.
Yeah. And that's what my 2026 is going to be, going all in on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. And shorts and longs should be on separate channels if you decide to do that, just FYI.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So talk to us a little bit more about how you start the topic. Okay, so someone comes into your sphere, they hit you up on TikTok, they join your newsletter.
Running a residential memory care home is not just a calling. It's a maze of licensure, paperwork, zoning regulations, and day-to-day challenges that can feel overwhelming. That's why so many successful operators partner with Legato Living franchise. Legato Living does more than just help you open a home. They help you open it the right way, so you can stay focused on what matters, providing exceptional care to those living with dementia. And once your doors are open, it can get lonely at the top. As a Legato Living franchisee, you are never on your own. Legato Living offers ongoing operational support, from staff training and owner conferences to systems, cultures, and quality assurance, because a home is only as good as its operator, and great operators deserve a great partner. If you're ready to open a residential memory care home that truly makes a difference, visit Legato Living and start with confidence today.
What are the first few things you say to them to get them to be thinking about, oh, yeah, I'm going to need either assistance so I don't have to go into care, or I'm going to need care at some point, and how do I prepare for that?
Yes. The first thing I find where people are totally uneducated is this whole idea, oh, I'm just going to stay home and I'll get care at home. Then when you dive into their finances, you're like, you can do that, but until it gets to a certain point. So I do think people are a little not delusional, that's a terrible word, but little like uneducated on how far money can take them in certain decisions. So it is identifying like how does your money relate to aging? That's one of the first steps that people really do gravitate toward, because they really want to know. And then we talk about a lot of, how did you see aging? How did your parents age? What did that feel like to you? What are your fears? Is your fear needing support? Having somebody have to come into your house, or you moving to assisted living and having somebody to have to take care of you? So it's helping them identify what are their biggest fears, and that's what's stopping them from actually thinking about things. I think it's also this idea, like I said before, changing the framework, changing the mindset of, oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And then all of a sudden something can happen when bringing in support or just having conversations about what that may look like to keep their independence. I can't say it enough. I really work with my clients on, okay, if your goal is this, then we really need to start talking about these type of services. How much do they cost? How do you bring them in slowly? A lot of people don't realize that going into assisted living more independent is how you get the most out of it and how you get the best care, because everyone's getting to know you in a more independent way. So as you decline, they're noticing. And so they're able to call the doctor in sooner because they know you. Or if you're having issues, there's people that will notice, versus when you come in a full-blown crisis where your health is so far, you're not really giving them an opportunity to be their best in assisted living, because now you come in, you have such high care. And while the caregivers are trying to get to know you, that's when stuff happens because they don't know you. And so having services earlier is how you actually stay independent. And so it's just talking about that with people. It's just changing that mindset. Don't wait for a decline. What can we bring in today to prevent a decline?
What are the most common services that typically need to be brought in first?
Physical therapy. People I'm like, even if the doctor, you can only get approved for 3 sessions, you go get at that baseline. And then that physical therapist, and anytime you have a stumble or anytime you stand up and you're dizzy, you call them again and get another doctor's order and you go back in. So physical therapy. I think meals. I think people don't think enough about having well-balanced meals, even if it's a meal delivery, even if there's so many services out there that, like Chefs for Seniors, that have a whole program for meals. So I think that one is one that isn't brought in early enough. And general, like, housekeeping. I have one of my long YouTubes I did was all about, you should have a housekeeper if you're able to afford it. It's all about that. But lawn people, like, what are all these tasks you're doing that you could have somebody that you start trusting now? Because it's not about the fact that you can't do it. It's about the fact that there may be a day where you can't. And that's not when you want to find a trusted support. You should have trusted support before you can't do it. So they know you, you know them. That's how you get the best out of any type of care situation, is knowing who's around you earlier. A handyman. You should know
that started earlier.
Yeah.
I'm all about the lawn care, the cleaning. We've had that for years, and I just think it's a good use of time. I don't mow the lawn anymore. Those house cleaners, they're so fast, right? I can't do it like that. And I'm too ADHD to even clean the house like that. They're done like that. Yeah.
Well, but also too, people don't realize that's where people also lose control. All of a sudden their adult daughter comes in and the house is a mess. It's dusty. The fridge hasn't been cleaned out. And that's where all of a sudden your independence and your dignity is starting to be questioned. And that's what I want to help people avoid, is that's how people lose control, is because they're trying to hang on to these tasks out of pride when they're actually the things that are going to create tension in your life. And so start looking at that now.
Yeah, I love that. For anybody that's but I like mowing the lawn. I always want people to think about what is their highest and best use of their time, right? And so some people, that's great for a lot of us.
Well, and if you love doing the lawn, then don't start with that. Get somebody to help in the house. Yeah. So it doesn't mean you have to. It's just, what are your priorities and figuring them out.
Love that. Okay, let's say we've got a senior that has hired out a couple of services. They're getting their lawn done. They're getting their cleaning done. They're seeing the physical therapist. They've got some meals delivered. But let's say that they still need more assistance. Where do you draw the line to say, hey, it's time to think about going into some sort of assisted care?
We've had before, because I work with independent adults. So we've had conversations about what their goals are. And we have identified if they ever need support, why they would go into a community versus staying home. So I've already identified what their first goal is. So for them, if it was they're going into a community because of the social component, that's a big piece of why somebody would choose an assisted living versus care at home. And I talk to people about that a lot, that you can get all the care you want at home, but if you're not interacting with anybody, that's not the best place for you. And so we talk about communities. And we talk about what type of community. There's a lot of different options. There's like the places I worked, all levels of care, and maybe they start in independent living because maybe they just need some care coming in here and there. Or do they go straight to assisted living? And so I work with a lot of people that are determining, do they do a continuing care retirement community in the next few years? So when somebody is starting to need support, we break down the pros and cons of home versus community. And I help them come to the decision of what would be the best for them. And then if it is a community, that's great. Then I introduce them to, so my clients are all over. I don't just work in my area because my service is more high level. So then if it is community that we're going to look at, I then introduce them to the concept of a placement specialist. And why would they use a placement specialist? How does that business model work? Why are they free? They should understand that they are getting a referral. It's a great business model. I've seen it work many times. I have a personal person I use here for clients that are local to me, but consumers should know how that business model works. So I'll introduce them to that concept. And then they may work with somebody like that to get placed into a community. And then that's how it works. But my clients are normally before all of that. I do get reached out to a lot by adult children who are in that moment to have to help make a decision. And those are the ones that primarily we're looking at placement. We're looking at what are the next steps. And I have a program for that. Yeah.
I got a question for you on placement agents. A lot of people use them. I do think that, especially early on when you're first opening your home and you don't have a lot of kind of community knowledge of your services, it's a good option. But a lot of times the homes that are, especially residential style care homes that are doing really great, after a while don't really need them anymore. They're just getting referrals after referrals. How do seniors find out about those really great communities
Yeah. So part of my recommendation to people is always, you need to go on a local Facebook group, and every area has Facebook groups for everything, and go on a parent one, go on a whatever, and put out who getting personal referrals for what the communities are. And then if you use a placement person, I tell people, come prepared with a list of places. Don't just allow them to only tell you. You should also do your research and say, hey, I want to see, based on personal referrals, I want to see this and this. And they should have to show you if they're ethical and but yeah, I can.
Regulated. It's not a very regulated thing at this point.
No, it's not. And that's why when I'll reach, like I'll go on, tell them, go online, start asking neighbors. You'd be surprised and how many people you know that had to move a loved one in, you just didn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you put it out there, the universe will come back and give you recommendations, and you can do it on your own. You don't need a placement person, but I think they should know about that service. A lot of people don't even know about that service. So we talk about the pros and cons of using a placement specialist versus doing it yourself, and how to get the best out of the placement specialist, doing your own research and coming to them with options, and then letting them show you options that maybe you didn't know. So yeah, it's just, my whole role is to just help people understand what services are out there and how they work and why they cost what they cost.
Love that. So let's talk about the money conversation a little bit. How do you broach that with folks? Are they typically surprised at the costs? Is it expected? Give me a little synopsis there.
Yeah, I would say I think people are more shocked at the cost of home care than necessarily assisted living. I think a lot of times my conversation is, there may come a time where assisted living is cheaper than staying home. And I think people get shocked about that sometimes. I think overall, from what I hear, is everyone thinks the industry is too expensive. How do people afford this? But people that can afford it, there's obviously going to be people that they're in a situation where they're not going to be able to afford. And I've worked with where adult children have called me. They've paid for my service and I've helped them navigate. Okay, you'll be eligible for this. You won't be eligible for that, from a low income place. But if you have pretty moderate means, most people can figure it out. They're just surprised at the cost. But once you put it all together and say, okay, here's what you're getting out of it. And so if you break down all the things you pay for at home and then put that in relation to what you're getting through this price more, but it's not insane as they originally hear when they hear about the price. But this is another reason I tell people, move sooner than later. It's going to be cheaper. And if you want the best use of your funds and you are already starting to struggle in certain areas, if you're already feeling socially isolated, start again in independent living. And then that is the most economical way sometimes to start. And then you can pull in services a la carte. Most places have the a la carte services. And then if it gets to be too much, then you can move to assisted living. But this generation has this, we save our money for the worst case. And I want to also help people reverse that. Like, how are we using our money to stay independent? It will always be cheaper if we use our finances to maintain independence and not hang on to it and waiting until now we need to spend $15,000 a month on assisted living and care, when you could have been spending $6,000 because you had very limited care, but you're in an environment that's supporting you to keep you independent.
I see. No, that does make sense. It's a long-term investment instead of waiting till the last minute and hoping for the best.
Exactly. You'll
So,
always spend
Allison,
more.
what inspired you to write a book? It's called The 4 Pillars to Keep Control of Your Aging Journey. I'm just curious, like, how did you come up with that book is the way and I'm going to write it?
I knew I had a lot to say, and I knew that people can appreciate a framework when they're trying to think about aging. People avoid this conversation because they just don't even know where to begin. And again, we've come from a culture of we begin with what we're struggling with. So I wanted to give the generation that is in their aging years, 70s and 80s, but actually has no issues, really isn't declining quite yet. We have to anticipate that will come. So I wanted to give them a framework to be able to be thoughtful about their future and to be thoughtful about how to approach aging. And so that's where the 4 pillars came from. And when I started writing, where they truly came from was every crisis I saw in senior living, and I had somebody test me. I'm like, give me a crisis you've seen. Every single crisis fit into one of these 4 pillars. So if we're thoughtful about each of these pillars in our individual life, the likelihood of us warding off some of these crises that were so unnecessary. I saw so much crisis that could have been avoided in my 20 years. Then that will help with our independence. And so that's where the concept came from.
I love that. How long did it take you to write a book?
It's not a super long book. It's a pretty easy read. I would say I made a goal for myself. I'm very goal oriented. And so I started, I want to say October. And I said by December 31st, I wanted to be able to send the first draft to the person that was helping me write a book for the first time. And I did it. So I was able to, and I wrote it all myself. No ChatGPT. Nowadays, you could just ChatGPT. And I didn't really know that back then. Even though it was only 3 years ago, it's crazy how times have changed more. So It's literally all my own writing. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, I think there's I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but people have gone from barely touching AI to way over leveraging it.
Yeah.
I'm getting it all the time. Someone's like, I cranked out this 20-page plan for how we're going to do XYZ. And I'm like, you didn't even read this. This doesn't match at all what I just keep seeing it nonstop. I'm like, guys, it's overcomplicated. You're tone it down a bit with the AI. My goodness. I'm a big proponent. Everybody should be using it, but it shouldn't be everything. If all you can do is produce your products through AI now, like that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. What haven't we covered on big topics? We talked about how to kind of extend your ability to live independently. We've talked about the money conversation. We've talked about how you reach seniors. What are some other parts or pieces we haven't covered yet on this conversation?
I think, since we're talking about assisted living, I think people also need to realize that moving out of your home doesn't necessarily mean you're going to assisted living. I think people have this like misunderstanding that if they're leaving their home, then they're going,
It's
and there
over.
should be a few steps. Assisted living really should be because there's a need and because you're going to get better quality of care than what you're currently getting. But it doesn't have to be, there can be many steps before that, and that can keep you independent. So I think that's a big thing I tell people is don't be scared of the conversation of moving, because it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be assisted living. There is definitely a need for assisted living. I believe in assisted living, but I do think there's people in assisted living that if they had been a little more proactive, could have probably avoided it.
I'd like to add to that just that we see a lot of residential style assisted living homes where the residents are happier there than they were alone in their house by themselves. And they've got all their favorite trinkets and stuff in their room with their furniture, and they're there socializing with 7 to 15 other residents, and all the staff members know them personally, know their names, and it's an absolutely beautiful thing. And so I almost want to counter the argument of, oh, I'm leaving my home, but it's no, you're going to create a new home, and potentially one where you had more love and social interaction than you did have the last few years. And especially for those that are widowed, I just think it can actually be a healthier thing. And sometimes the outcomes are living longer when you have that great environment to be in. Yeah.
100%. I think we're on the cusp of the generation that's in their late 80s, 90s. They really were the ones that home was they bought it. They didn't leave it. That was a big sense of pride for them. They raised their kids there. Staying home was huge. I do think the 70s and 80-year-olds that we're seeing now age are more inclined to make changes in their living environment, knowing that the social component is really important, which will be good for assisted living for those people that need it. They're going to be more inclined to move. But yes, I agree with you. It's one of my pillars is social connection and social engagement, because it is so important. And if you staying home means that you're sitting on a couch with a caregiver that's not your generation, that's not your peer, and you're barely having conversation, and even if you are having conversation, it's not the same, then is that really how you want to age? Because by all means, it's your choice, but just know that is not going to promote longevity. That is not going to promote longevity. And
100%.
if your goal is to live a happy, healthy, even if you need some support, then you've got to include that social connection as part of your strategy. And that's a huge piece, is the social connection.
Allison, did we cover the 4 pillars? Social connection is one. What were the other 3?
So the first one is support system. Where is your support system? Or do you have a support system? Solo aging is a huge buzzword right now. And so you need to know if you are a solo ager and how do you set up a support system. So support system is the first one. Home is the second one, your living environment. What does that look like? Is it something that can support your independence, or is it going to hinder your independence as you age? Number 3 is supportive services. These are things where money is exchanged, either insurance or private pay. And you should know how much things cost. If your goal is to stay home, for example, you need an education on home care. If moving to a community is something that you would consider, what does that look like? Because there's a lot of different, do you need a large community? Do you want a residential care home? Do you have knowing what's out there? So supportive services is the education on what's out there and knowing how much it costs. And then the last one is the social connection. How do you socialize, and how do you make sure your environment that you're in promotes your socialization and doesn't hinder it? And that's really important.
Love that. Thank you for the review of the 4 pillars. And Allison, so when a client reaches out to work with you, you develop age readiness roadmap, right? That's your term for it?
Yeah. So my coaching program is my aging foundation. So that's when they're super independent, they work through a 4-session coaching program. My aging readiness roadmap is for families or individuals who are on the cusp of a big decision. Something's going on, something's happening, and they do need somebody that's unbiased. I'm not selling a service, I'm just selling education. And I talk them through what is their situation and what kind of services will help support them. And then help them vet those services in their area, help them understand how to get the best out of them. This is something I tell people all the time in promotion of community living is if a caregiver sitting on the couch staring at you is going to drive you crazy, because it would drive me crazy, and you think I'm just wasting money, they're sitting there, then home care is not a good choice for you. That's where community living can help you, because they'll just come in and out as you need them, but you're not staring at them, staring on their phone while you're paying them $30 an hour. And so we walked through, what, really from an insider's knowledge, what really goes on, the difference between the care models.
That's such a funny way to put it. Yeah. And it's so true too. And assisted living is just a better deal. And
that's why a lot of people don't get support.
Financially, right? We already hit that.
Yep. And that's why a lot of people don't get support, because they call these home cares and they're like, oh, you need 4 hours and we're going to pay you $30 an hour. And they only need 1 hour of actual support. Yeah. And so that's where the conversation goes, is don't be scared of communities, because you will get exactly what you're looking for at a better price point, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, Allison, this is awesome. I'm so glad. I think you're maybe the third person we've had on here that is focused on educating ahead of needing care, which is so badly needed. Every piece of this industry is so underserved, but it really warms my heart to hear your story and what you're building and how much success you've had and the approach that you're taking. If someone's listening to this and they figure it applies to them, what's the best way for them to reach out to you so they can either take your course, read your book, get a personalized roadmap? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah. So my website is openlyaging.com. So everything's there. You can sign up for my free newsletter. I send out a weekly newsletter. Find me on social media at Openly Aging. But yeah, I would start with my website, and you'll be able to do a complimentary consultation where we just can talk about your situation, where you're at. Again, I work with aging individuals, but I do get a lot of families that reach out that are just wanting to know how to start the conversation with their parents, or their parents are a little hesitant. And so I can give them some good pointers, because after working 20 years in senior living, I can speak to that age. I know what their struggles are. I know what they're going through that. And so I help families speak the language that's needed to get some momentum moving.
Yeah.
And it's all about, they need to be in control. Their dignity matters. That's the thing.
Yes.
I saw so many times where aging people were just a task on a list, or the adult children were like, we don't know what to do, so we've got to make this choice. And I think as I get older, I don't ever want to feel like I'm a task on a list. But that comes from the aging person has to require. And the only way you can require to not be looked down on is by taking control. And if you wait, if you wait, then you're just asking for your kids to have to come in and save you. And that's not productive. So I want to give those people the words and the language to start advocating for themselves early and keep independence.
I love that. That's such a beautiful way to put it. And it makes so much sense. My parents are coming for Christmas. They don't know we're going to have this conversation. But
you got to get my book. Get them my book for Christmas.
Oh, good idea. Good idea. Quick. I'll order it right now. Is it going to be here?
It's Amazon. It will.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I might have to do that. Actually, I will do that. So awesome. Thank you, Allison. And all right, for the listeners, that's openlyaging.com and Openly Aging on TikTok and Instagram. Okay. We will put links in there. She has a free school community as well, which is the platform we use for our mastermind. We love that. And Allison, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. I look forward to doing this again soon, to hearing how you have 200,000 followers on TikTok next time, right?
No, we're going to go YouTube. I want 200 on YouTube.
Let's go. We got some pointers for you after this.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good to know.
Thanks a lot, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Rail Room Assisted Living Podcast. We hope you found today's episode insightful. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a raving 5-star review. And a quick review helps more listeners find the show and more seniors get the exceptional care they deserve.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And just so you know, we have prepared some free resources for you to help you succeed in residential assisted living in addition to this podcast. Head over to theralroom.com, that is theralroom.com, to download our free 10-step guide to launch your first or next residential assisted living home, or our 10 reasons to passively invest in residential assisted living ebooks.
And if you're ready to take the next step and make real moves in the RAL industry, join us in the RAL Room Mastermind. It is an exclusive community where we deep dive into everything you need to launch and grow your own residential assisted living business. You'll get access to recorded courses, live calls with industry experts, a RAL calculator, resources and tools, like-minded entrepreneurs, funding opportunities, and an expert networking community to help you along your journey.
Be sure to join us next time on the RAL Room podcast as we continue to explore the world of residential assisted living with more great guests. See you then.